Before the world had form, there was silence. A deep, calm silence that held the breath of creation. No cities, no names, no prayers, only presence. And in this stillness, the voice of Olorum, the divine, spoke without sound. He called upon one being to carry out the most sacred task, to bring life into the world. That being was Oxalá, not a god of thunder, not a warrior of fire, but a spirit of peace, dressed in white. He was not chosen because of power, but because of stillness, because of purity, because he listened. Like the beginning of Genesis, when the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, Oxalá stood at the edge of creation, ready to begin, not with a command, but with care. There was no need for armies, no need for miracles yet, only the gentle task of forming life, one breath, one touch at a time. Olorum gave Oxalá 3 sacred tools: clay to shape the body, water to soften it, and breath to bring it to life. This was not just a job, it was a communion. Oxalá was not building people, he was sculpting souls. And like in the Bible, where the Lord God formed Adam from the dust and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, Oxalá carried that same quiet reverence. He began his journey to the sacred place where creation would happen. He walked with bare feet, wrapped in white, his staff in hand. Each step was a prayer, each moment sacred. He moved through mountains, valleys, and silence. No angels accompanied him. No trumpets announced his coming. Just him and the promise of life. He was not rushing. He was listening. When he arrived, he touched the earth with his hands. The clay was warm, like a heartbeat waiting to be awakened. And slowly, with patience and love, he began to shape humanity. He didn't make them perfect. He made them real, fragile, capable of love. And when the time came, he leaned in close and breathed. That breath was not loud. It was not dramatic, but it was sacred. And in that breath, humanity opened its eyes. In that breath, a soul was born. And Oxalá smiled not because he had succeeded, but because he had loved. He didn't say a word. Creation doesn't need noise, only presence. But even the most gentle light must pass through shadow. Oxalá, chosen by Olorum to create life, walked with purity in his heart and peace in his steps. But the path to creation is not a straight road. It winds through silence, through heat, through temptation. As Oxalá traveled toward the place where he would shape humanity, he felt the burden of his mission settle into his bone. The earth beneath his feet was dry, the air was heavy, the way was long. And on this path alone, without music, without praise, he grew tired. Tired in the way only sacred beings can grow tired, not just in the body, but in the spirit. He came upon a palm tree and found wine, fresh and tempting. The silence around him pulsed with stillness. He remembered the rule: do not drink. Remain pure. But his lips were dry. His body was weak. His heart still faithful, but worn. And so he drank. Not out of rebellion, but out of need. Just a sip. But even that sip pulled him from the divine rhythm. The clarity in his spirit clouded. His steps, once steady, grew slow. His strength, once full of sacred promise, began to slip from him like sand through open fingers. By the time he arrived at the sacred place, he could not create. The clay would not form. The breath would not come. The task, entrusted to him with love, remained unfinished. Oxalá, the one chosen to give life, had failed. There were no punishments, no fire from the sky, only silence and the weight of knowing. And yet, within that silence, a transformation began. Not in glory, not in grandness, but in surrender. Oxalá turned back. He walked slowly, with no miracles to show, no triumph to carry. He returned to Olorum, not to argue, not to explain, but to bow, to accept what had been broken, not his divinity, but his expectation of perfection. And Olorum did not speak in thunder. The divine presence simply listened, and in that listening, forgiveness bloomed. Oxalá did not ask for a second chance. He simply stood with humility, with softness, with the same white cloth wrapped around his soul. And that was enough. For when the divine meets true humility, the sacred is reborn. He set out again, no longer walking with the confidence of the chosen, but with the quiet strength of the one who has fallen and risen without bitterness. When he reached the earth once more, he did not rush. He touched the clay not as a master, but as a servant. He held it gently, as if holding something that could break. And again, he shaped humanity not flawless, not proud, but fragile and real. And this time, when he leaned in to breathe life, the breath came not from power, but from love, a soft, quiet breath that filled the earth with spirit. And the first soul opened its eyes, not into a perfect world, but into a world made with grace. Oxalá did not celebrate. He simply remained, present, at peace. And in that stillness, creation was complete, not because he succeeded, but because he had become the kind of light that chooses to return. Oxalá was not one, he was two, not in division, but in fullness. In the traditions where he is honored, Oxalá reveals himself in two sacred forms, as Oxaguian, the young and courageous warrior, and as Oxalufan, the old and serene sage. They are not opposites, but different expressions of one divine spirit, one that knows when to act and when to wait, when to fight and when to surrender. In this duality lies something ancient and universal. Just as the scriptures present Christ as both the Lamb of God and the Lion of Judah, so too does Oxalá embody both force and stillness, energy and rest, youth and wisdom. Oxaguian rises with the fire of mission, strong, determined, with the vitality of new beginnings. He is the breath that charges forward, the spirit that says, "Let there be light," and brings it into being. In him, we see the Jesus who overturned the tables in the temple, who walked through cities, healing the broken, teaching crowds, and facing storm. But Oxalufan is the part of divinity that time has seasoned, the voice that grows slower but never weaker, the figure who leans on his sacred staff not for support but as a symbol of rootedness. He is the Jesus who withdrew to pray alone, who remained silent before Pilate, who washed the feet of others, and who chose the stillness of surrender over the noise of resistance. These two faces of Oxalá teach that holiness is not fixed in age or form. It evolves with the rhythm of the soul. There is a time to speak and a time to listen, a time to walk boldly and a time to sit in stillness and let God move through you. Both Oxaguian and Oxalufan wear white, but one's is vibrant and full of movement. The other's is pale like early dawn, and yet both reflect the same light, the light that does not change, even as the form that carries it grows older. This white is not mere fabric, it is a message. In Afro-Brazilian ritual, white is the color of Oxalá, not just because it is pure, but because it is the sum of all colors, the embrace of all things, just as the divine embraces all that is human. In the Christian tradition too, white robes appear as signs of transfiguration and resurrection. When Christ appears in radiant white on the mount, or when the angels at the empty tomb wear shining garments, it is to say, something divine has happened here. Oxalá teaches this not with miracles, but with gestures. He shows that purity is not about being untouched, but about being true. His rituals are simple, calm, and quiet. Offerings to him are not grand feasts or fiery sacrifice. They are rice, water, and silence. He asks not for noise, but for presence. When his devotees honor him, they do so without drums, without loud declarations. Instead, they offer him space. They clean the altar. They breathe. And he comes, not in a flash of light, but in the way morning light slowly fills a room without asking. This is a spiritual truth echoed in Jesus' own life. He did not seek loudness. When he healed, he often said, "Tell no one." When he taught, he did so in parables, stories that had to be lived before they were fully understood. When he knelt to write in the dust before forgiving the woman caught in sin, he chose silence over spectacle. Oxalá mirrors this sacred restraint. In a world of noise, he chooses quiet. In a world of rush, he teaches stillness. In a world of proving, he shows the power of simply being. The staff that Oxalufan carries, the opaxero, is more than a cane. It is a symbol of time made sacred, of wisdom that walks slowly but never loses direction. Just as Moses carried a staff that parted seas and guided people, so too does Oxalá carry the presence of leadership that does not dominate, but serves. And as the Gospels speak of Jesus as the shepherd who knows his sheep, who walks with them and lays down his life, so too does Oxalá represent the shepherd spirit, the calm guardian of life's unfolding. In these two chapters of his being young and old, bold and soft, Oxalá reminds us that spiritual power is not one thing, and that holiness is not locked into age, speed, or strength. There are seasons of fire and seasons of water, seasons where we must rise with determination and speak with courage. And there are sacred days where we must lower our voice, hold still, and let our breath become prayer. Oxalá lives in both, and through him, we remember that God does not only move in miracles, he also moves in white silence, in slow footsteps, and in the quiet dignity of being fully present. Among all the days of the week, there is one that stands apart, not because of work or war or noise, but because of what it chooses to leave untouched. That day is Sunday. In the rhythm of both Christian and Afro-Brazilian tradition, Sunday is a day of light, a return to peace, a reawakening after descent. For those who walk with Oxalá, Sunday is his sacred time, not because the heavens thunder, but because the air becomes soft, the heart becomes still, and silence becomes holy again. In Candomblé and Umbanda, it is the day when the color white returns to the center, when people dress in simplicity, place white flowers on their altars, light white candles, and let the world slow down enough for the sacred to enter unnoticed. There are no violent drums, no rushing winds, only stillness that breathes. And it is no coincidence that in Christian tradition, Sunday is also the day when Jesus rose from the tomb, not with swords, but with peace. The Gospels tell us that the tomb was already open when the women arrived. There were no battles, no angels with swords, only a stone rolled away, only a quiet voice asking, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" It is in that moment that light returned to the world, not as fire, but as presence. In the same way, Oxalá walks through Sunday not as a conqueror, but as a gentle reminder that stillness is sacred. When the world becomes quiet, when our hands are no longer full of control, Oxalá comes close. Sunday, then, is not just the first day of the week. It is the beginning of a different kind of time, one that is not measured in minutes, but in intention. It is a day to clean the soul, not the house. A day to speak less and listen more. To let our prayers be breath and our actions be slow. Oxalá walks slowly through Sunday. Jesus rose into Sunday, and both invite us not to do more, but to be more open, more quiet, more present. This leads us to something even more radical in today's world, the holiness of slowness. We live in a culture that rewards speed, where value is measured in urgency, and success is defined by how much you can carry, how fast you can deliver. But neither Jesus nor Oxalá moved this way. They both walked, not ran through their ministries, through their missions, through their trials. Oxalá is known for walking slowly, with his staff, through dust and time. His pace is not weakness, it is mastery. Each step he takes is full of presence, like a monk counting breaths. When he walks, he listens. He allows space for things to unfold. He trusts that the world does not need to be pushed, it needs to be honored. In this, he mirrors the Jesus who moved slowly through the villages, who stopped when people called out, who delayed miracles to speak with women beside wells, who arrived at Lazarus' tomb late, not because he didn't care, but because divine time is not rushed. In the Gospels, Jesus never hurries. Even when the crowd is urgent, even when people beg him to come quickly, he responds with calm. There is always time in him and through him, and this is exactly what Oxalá teaches. The sacred is not in what is fast, but in what is fully lived. His rituals are slow. His movements are minimal. He does not fill space with noise. He lets space breathe. And in doing so, he creates room for the divine to speak. This slowness is not delay. It is devotion. It is what allows true healing, real transformation, and deep love to grow. It is why Oxalá's presence is often described as soft but unshakable, because he moves like the ocean tide, without urgency but unstoppable. And it is why Jesus, even when walking toward crucifixion, never rushed, never begged, never shouted. He carried his cross slowly, step by step, not because he was weak, but because he understood that suffering, like love, is not something to escape, it is something to walk through with faith. In Oxalá's slow walk and in Jesus' steady silence, we are reminded that God's time is not our time. That real change does not happen at the speed of technology or ambition, but at the pace of trust. And so we are invited to slow down, not because we have failed, but because we are finally ready to walk with God, not ahead of Him. This is the secret of Sunday. This is the wisdom of slowness. This is the rhythm of light that does not blind, but guides gently, kindly, patiently, just like Oxalá, just like the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Suffering does not always scream. Sometimes it walks, quietly, step by step, with no one to witness it but the earth and the sky. Oxalá, whose hands shaped life itself, knew this kind of suffering. Not the suffering of punishment, but the suffering that comes from carrying something sacred through a world that cannot yet receive it. The stories say that his journey to create humanity left him wounded, that his legs were torn, his feet raw, his body tired beyond the limits of form. But he never stopped walking. He never cursed the pain. He never turned it into anger. Instead, he accepted it, not as defeat, but as offering. There is a holy kind of pain that doesn't try to be seen, it just is. Oxalá's wounds were not marks of failure. They were the cost of love, the kind of love that keeps moving even when no one understands. He walked slowly, quietly, with his staff and his white robes, carrying more than the pain of flesh. He carried the disappointment of falling, the shame of having broken the sacred law, the weight of trying again. But he carried it with grace, and that grace is what makes his story divine. This mirrors so closely the pain of Jesus, especially in the days of his passion. He too walked a road, not with fire in his eyes, but with blood on his back and a cross on his shoulders. And he too was silent. He did not shout in protest. He did not demand mercy. He accepted suffering, not because he deserved it, but because he knew it would become a path for others. In Isaiah, it is written, "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth, like a lamb led to the slaughter." Oxalá and Jesus both walked with that same silence, not empty silence, but full, radiant, trembling with meaning. This is what sacred suffering looks like. It does not lash out. It does not seek attention. It transforms the unbearable into something holy. In both traditions, we find the truth that love and pain are often twins, that to carry one is often to carry the other. But what makes these figures powerful is not the pain itself. It is the way they carried it, without resentment, without bitterness, without losing their softness. And from this softness comes something even greater, the heart of the Father who does not judge. Because Oxalá, despite all his trials, all his wounds, never stops being a father. He is not a ruler who sits above his creation. He is the one who bends low to breathe life into it. He is the one who watches, who listens, who waits. He is the spiritual father of the Oxalás, the one who sees his children rise, fall, run away, return, and never once does he close his arms. In the New Testament, Jesus tells a parable about a father, the father of the prodigal son, a son who wastes everything, who leaves, who forgets who he is. And yet, when he returns, the father does not ask why. He does not punish. He does not lecture. He runs. He embraces. He clothes him. He celebrates. That is the heart of the Divine Father. And that is the heart of Oxalá. He is not the one who says, "Where have you been?" but the one who says, "I never stopped waiting." He is not perfection, demanding perfection. He is grace meeting imperfection with a smile. His role as father is not about control, it is about presence. And his love does not need to be earned, it only needs to be remembered. Jesus, though called the Son of God, carries this same fatherly energy. When he washes the feet of his disciples, he is not being less divine. He is showing what divine love really is. When he forgives without being asked, when he feeds those who did not ask for bread, when he heals those who did not know his name, he acts as a father who protects, who gives, who lays down his life not for reward, but because love has no other choice. This kind of fatherhood is rare in a world that confuses authority with power. Oxalá does not shout. Jesus does not force. They both invite. They both remain. And in them, we find a new model of strength, a strength that chooses tenderness, a strength that holds space, a strength that waits for us to return, no matter how long it takes. So when we feel broken, lost, or unworthy, we do not need to fear the divine. Because the divine is not waiting to judge us, it is waiting to embrace us. It is the Father watching the horizon, not asking for perfection, but simply whispering, "Come home." There are places in the world where candles are lit for Jesus, and flowers are laid for Oxalá, and no one feels the need to choose between them. These places are not bound by theological definitions or divided by doctrine. They are built in hearts. In these hearts, faith is not a wall, it is a bridge. In these homes, there might be a statue of the Sacred Heart next to a white altar for Oxalá, and no one finds that strange. Because when love is true, it knows how to speak many languages. In Brazil, where oceans carried both pain and resilience across continents, people learned to find God in more than one face. Enslaved Africans brought the wisdom of their Oryxas, and when forced into Christian names, they did not lose their light, they simply let it shine through different form. Oxalá began to appear in the figure of Jesus, not because he was Jesus, but because both spoke of peace, both taught in silence, both forgave without being asked. And so, people did not erase one to worship the other. They wove them together, not in confusion, but in reverence. It was not about mixing religions. It was about recognizing the one Spirit that whispers through all things. This is something the modern world often struggles to understand, that truth is not weakened by multiplicity, it is deepened by it. When we honor both Jesus and Oxalá, we are not betraying either. We are listening with wider ears, seeing with clearer eyes. And in that wide view, we discover that what truly matters is not the name we give to God, but the way we live that name. If we walk with love, we are walking in the steps of both. If we bring peace, if we forgive, if we carry silence like a prayer, we are already speaking the language of the sacred. People sometimes ask, who is the real one? Who is right? But that question often comes from fear. The better question is, who helps me love more? Who helps me become softer, braver, more present? If Oxalá does that, let him speak. If Jesus does that, let him guide. And if both do, then rejoice. You are twice blessed. There is no need to divide what heaven has already joined in spirit. And yet, as we walk this path, we discover that the greatest challenge is not believing it is waiting, because true transformation is slow. Spiritual growth is not fast, and Oxalá is the master of waiting. He does not rush the river. He does not pull the flower open. He stands with patience that has no urgency, knowing that every soul blooms in its time. His presence teaches us that nothing sacred can be forced, not healing, not peace, not love. In rituals offered to him, there is no rushing. Offerings are made gently. Songs are sung slowly. The pace itself is part of the prayer. And in this, Oxalá teaches us to honor the rhythm of becoming. He shows us that what is delayed is not denied, it is being prepared. That not seeing change does not mean it is absent, it is happening beneath the surface. Jesus lived this truth too. So many times, he paused. He left the crowds to be alone. He walked at the pace of the poor and the wounded. He spoke slowly, knowing that true teaching takes time to take root. Even his greatest moment, the resurrection, came after silence. After 3 days of darkness, God is not in a hurry, and neither should we be. This kind of patience is not passive. It is powerful. It is the kind of strength that trusts, even when answers are not clear. It is the kind of faith that says, I don't see it yet, but I know it's coming. It is what allows us to breathe when we want to break, to sit still when we want to scream, to believe even when the evidence hasn't arrived. Both Oxalá and Jesus offer us this holy gift, the ability to wait with hope. They are not loud, they are not fast, but they are faithful. And they teach us to be faithful too, not only to God, but to the sacred timing of our own lives. So if you are tired, if you are wondering when your peace will come, if you are still healing and it feels too slow, hear their voices. Not in thunder, but in quiet. Not in answers, but in presence. They are still walking with you, still waiting with you, still planting seeds in you that will bloom when it's time. We live in a world of names. Names we're given, names we carry, names we argue over. But beyond the name, there is essence. And beyond essence, there is love. Oxalá and Jesus, two names, two traditions, two histories, are not the same being. Their stories rise from different soils. Their rituals carry different music. Their images appear in different garments. And yet, when the heart listens beyond the surface, what it hears is familiar. The peace of Oxalá is not so different from the mercy of Jesus. The silence of one carries the wisdom of the other. Their lives are shaped by service, their actions rooted in love, their paths lined with surrender. And when a soul comes close to either, it is not met with a demand, it is met with an invitation to be more kind, more patient, more whole. It is not about saying they are the same. It is about seeing that love wears many faces, and all of them point home. Some say Oxalá, some say Jesus, some say neither, but still walk with light in their hands. What matters is not the pronunciation of the divine name, but the posture of the heart that calls it. What matters is not who you kneel before, but what rises in you afterward, whether you carry peace into the world, whether you forgive your neighbor, whether you walk softly with others, knowing they too are walking toward the sacred. This truth appears even in the stories of Jesus himself. When his disciples tried to stop someone healing in his name because they were not part of the group, Jesus said, "Do not stop them. Whoever is not against us is for us." The light is never limited to our understanding. It flows wherever it is welcomed. Oxalá is one such name that welcomes the light. He is the stillness that heals, the softness that holds, the Father who embraces without asking for explanations. Jesus is the flame that teaches, the presence that comforts, the shepherd who calls each one by name. Their symbols may be different, a white cloth and a wooden staff, a crown of thorns and a cross, but the love they embody comes from the same divine source. It is love that creates without controlling, love that guides without force, love that gives and gives and gives. And so we come to the most sacred truth of all, that this love does not live far away. It does not dwell only in temples or behind rituals or within ancient names. It lives in you. The breath that Oxalá gave to clay still moves through your chest. The heart that Jesus opened on the cross still beats within your longing for peace. You do not need to go to a holy mountain. You do not need to wear white or walk barefoot unless it helps you remember. The divine is not watching from above. It is waiting within. You are the altar now. You are the clay and the light, the question and the answer, the wound and the healing. Oxalá walks beside you each time you choose gentleness over pride. Jesus speaks through you each time you lift someone who has fallen. The divine is not a myth. It is a memory that lives in your bones, your breath, your smallest kindness. And when you remember it, the world begins to glow again, not because it has changed, but because you have.